Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot and a PMDG 777 beta tester. Welcome to our go-around tutorial for the PMDG Boeing 777. If you're interested in a written version of this one, check out my Ultimate 777 Guide ebook. More on that in the video description below. And now let's get right into it. So we're going to start this video with a quick reminder of the stabilized approach criteria, as those are the primary reason why flight simmers need to conduct go-arounds. We're going to continue by having a look at the system behavior and a couple of the gotchas that the 777 autoflight system holds for you, and then we are going to have a look at the actual procedure itself, and we're going to conclude this video by actually flying a go-around so that you can see all of it coming together in action. But now let's start by reviewing the stabilized approach criteria. So remember, when you are passing 1,000 feet above field elevation, as may be indicated by the top of the white bar on your altitude indicator, we are going to have to meet a couple of certain criteria. Our airspeed needs to be within plus 10 or minus 5 knots of V approach, but not below VREF. We have to be within 1 dot localizer deflection, or half the RMP value on a non-precision approach, and we have to be within 1 dot glide slope deflection or plus minus 75 feet in case of a non-precision approach. Our thrust needs to be at a reasonable level, the speed brakes armed, landing gear down, landing flaps extended, and the landing checklist completed when we pass the stable approach gate. Only temporary exceedances of the speed are acceptable in case they immediately return to within the stabilized approach criteria, otherwise a go-around becomes mandatory. If a go-around has to be executed, it is initiated by pushing either of the 2 toga switches located on the backside of the thrust levers. In order to make this a little bit easier for you as flight simmers, PMDG have included a toga click spot on the mode control panel, and that's located on the little screw you have in the bottom left or in the bottom right of the mode control panel. If you press either of those 2, you simulate pushing the toga button. Now, there are different system behaviors depending on how often the toga button is pushed. If you push it for the first time, you're going to enter a reduced go-around thrust. If you push it for a second time, you're going to get full go-around thrust. Reduced go-around thrust exists because the 777 has huge engines installed, and conducting a go-around at maximum landing weight but with full thrust would result in a rapid acceleration or rapid rate of climb, which can be difficult to control. Therefore, reduced go-around thrust has been implemented by Boeing. Now, if reduced go-around thrust is chosen, if you just do a single click on the toga button, then your FMA is going to change to thrust, and the aircraft is automatically going to set an amount of thrust that it deems necessary to establish a minimum rate of climb of 2,000 feet per minute. If you press toga a second time, you will get thrust ref as your FMA, and thrust is going to increase all the way to the maximum go-around thrust. Now, if a missed approach routing is available on your legs page, then you will see LNAV, ARM, and in manual flight at 50 feet radio altitude, LNAV is going to engage, or in automatic flight above 200 feet radio altitude, LNAV is going to come on automatically. Now, the 777 is not going to initiate acceleration automatically until you reach the missed approach altitude. However, you should still accelerate at the acceleration altitude. Now, the idea behind this is that even at the maximum landing weight, your aircraft has rather high maneuvering speeds. So if you accelerate all the way to the flaps up maneuvering speed and there is a speed restriction on your missed approach, you are rather likely to exceed that speed restriction. Therefore, the philosophy is that you have to increase your speed manually at the acceleration altitude in order to start accelerating, and then you can manually set the target speed. Now, retract the flaps on schedule And as soon as the flaps are up or in the target's position for your missed approach, you are going to activate flight level change or VNAV. Now, my personal recommendation is to go with flight level change. The advantage for that is that flight level change mode is not automatically going to go to maximum thrust. Much rather, depending on the altitude that you still have to climb to your missed approach altitude, flight level change is going to make an intelligent selection of climb thrust so that you get a modest rate of climb to your missed approach altitude. In comparison to that, if you activate VNAV, you are going to get maximum climb thrust and the aircraft might develop a huge rate of climb until it can intercept the target altitude. Now, if you do not manually increase your speed during the missed approach, your aircraft is going to maintain your V approach, or if you accelerate to a speed above V approach for more than 5 seconds, your target speed is reset to the current airspeed with a maximum of the speed that you previously had in your MCP window plus 25 knots. If this is done, and if you use toga mode all the way to level off, then as soon as you are reaching the altitude set in the altitude window of the MCP, your AFDS pitch mode is going to change to altitude hold, and when the altitude is captured or when vertical speed or FPA mode are selected, the MCP speed is automatically going to be set to the flap placard speed minus 5 knots or 250 knots if the flaps are up, or any speed that you have manually entered. Now, let's go ahead and review the autopilot modes that we will encounter during our go-around. So, when toga is pressed for the first time, you will get thrust as the active speed mode, or rather as the active auto thrust mode, and then you will get toga and toga as lateral and vertical modes. LNAV is going to arm if a missed approach routing is available in the FMS, as it is today. Now, above 200 feet radio altitude, LNAV is going to engage in automatic flight, and above 400 feet we gotta verify or manually select the desired roll mode. At the flap retraction altitude, we will manually increase the speed target so that we start accelerating, and as soon as the flap retraction is completed, we are going to use flight level change or VNAV as needed. Now, finally, when the target altitude is captured, we're going to run the after takeoff checklist. Now, let's talk about a couple of the gotchas in the PMDG 777 autopilot system, which, by the way, all of them exist in the real 777 as well. We're going to start with selection of the toga mode. So the toga push buttons work all the way until touchdown, but as soon as the airplane is on the ground, the toga buttons are disabled. This is what caused the Emirates 777 to crash in Dubai. They wanted to go around, but they touched down first, then selected the toga buttons and nothing happened. They rotated, started to climb, but thrust was never increased to go around thrust, and therefore soon after they fell out of the sky. Now, if toga is pressed just prior to touchdown, the full automatic flight go-around sequence is still available to you. So just be sure that if you touch down, if you're on the ground and then you press toga, you got to increase thrust manually. The second gotcha is the acceleration, since you need to increase your speed manually. This is something that can easily be forgotten in the 777, as other Boeing aircraft like the 737 behave differently there. Now the third gotcha is the availability of the flight director for the missed approach. If you conducted your approach with both flight director switches off and then pressed toga, the flight director would automatically engage, but the switches remain in the off position. If this is the case and you reach your MCP altitude, the flight director is going to disappear from view. Therefore, in some airlines it is SOP that if you want to use only, or if you don't want to use the flight director for landing, or if you cannot use it due to system limitations, you select both flight director switches off and then select the flight director on the pilot monitoring side back on again. This prevents the flight director from disappearing on the go-around. The last gotcha that you can encounter in the 777 is if you click the toga button too often and accidentally go to full go-around thrust. The rate of climb and the acceleration are going to be immense, and it may be difficult to control the airplane if this happens. So now that we have discussed the system behavior, let's go ahead and discuss the actual go-around procedure. So, when you initiate the go-around, you're going to push the toga switch and call go-around. Verify that thrust increases and select flaps 20. Verify rotation to the go-around attitude. Verify that thrust is set and call thrust set. With a positive climb, retract the landing gear. And limit your bank angle to 15 degrees if airspeed is below the minimum maneuver speed. Verify or position the flight director switches to on. And above 400 feet radio altitude, select or verify a roll mode and verify that the missed approach route is tracked and the missed approach altitude is set. Now at the acceleration height, set speed to the maneuvering speed for the planned flap setting and retract the flaps according to schedule, which basically works the same as it does after takeoff. Once the flaps are set to the planned flap setting and at or above the flap maneuvering speed, select level change or VNAV as needed. Verify that thrust changes as required. Verify that the missed approach altitude gets captured, and once the missed approach altitude is captured, run the after takeoff checklist. Sounds difficult, but it really is not. Let's go ahead and have a look at a practical example. So I'm going to switch off the active pause over here and we can start our actual approach. Now, a last little tip over here. If a go-around is instructed from ATC, but you're still at a high altitude, so you're not imminent of touching down the runway, take your time in a go-around. If, for example, a go-around was instructed right now, we could very well just sit back, take a breath, and then smoothly initiate the go-around procedure. You don't need to act immediately unless touchdown on a runway is imminent and ATC instructed a go-around. So we're reaching our minimum over here. Let's go ahead and carry out the go-around now. So, press toga, go-around, flaps 20. Flaps are coming up towards 20. We're above 200 feet, so LNAV has engaged. So, I've only done a single push of toga, so the engines went to reduced go-around thrust. We've got a positive rate of climb, gear up. You can see that now we get a rate of climb of roughly 2,000 feet a minute. It can become a little bit more, between 2 and 3,000, that is normal. 1,000 above the field, we are going to start our acceleration, so I'm going to turn our speed up to about 230 knots, which is our clean speed under this scenario. So we start accelerating. Going through the flap 20 speed, we are going to select flaps 5. So you can see altitude mode is capturing. Reaching the 5 speed, we retract the flaps to 1. And passing the 1 speed, we retract our flaps to up. Since altitude has already captured, we no longer need to select level change, but as soon as the flaps are up and we have the flaps up maneuvering speed, this is normally where we would select level change. And now that we're level at the missed approach altitude, we can run the after takeoff checklist, and that concludes our go-around procedure. So as you can see, preparation is key. Use reduced go-around thrust whenever it is necessary, and it really makes your life a lot easier. And finally, practice. Practice, practice, practice. The go-around is rather easy once you've done it a couple of times, but it is a maneuver that you don't execute on a daily basis, so you should revise it every now and then. Some pilots actually like to talk about the detailed steps in the approach briefing, which is something that you can do. but something that you don't have to do. Nonetheless, it is considered good practice to do this every now and then. With that, I would like to thank you very much for watching. Hope that you've enjoyed this video, hope that you learned something on it. I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments below, and until then, all I can say is thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in a written version of this, check out my Ultimate 777 Guide ebook. More on that in the video description below. And with that, thank you for watching, and I see you all again on the next one. As always, if you really loved what I am doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and see you all again on the next one.